Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at @it'sJessino. And today I'm going to be giving you my thoughts on the whole Aubameyang fiasco. I've been gone for the last couple of days. I'd kind of planned to be off. I didn't know how off I was going to be because I was thinking, well, on Saturday I could bring my computer over to my friend's house. I ended up going to a music festival this past weekend, and I was thinking I could bring my computer and my lights and everything and record from there. But I kind of thought to myself, I kind of wanted a smallish break, before the Christmas period because it's going to be nonstop now until February, March. So for me, it's like, okay, well, I could just take a smallish break. Kind of wish I didn't now because so many things happen like over the weekend, but it's fine. But yeah, so that's where I've been. So if you're like, why isn't she uploading anything? It's because I was having fun. Sorry. I know that's kind of unprofessional, but let's kind of get into it. So I guess towards the end, if you guys want to, we can talk a little bit about the Southampton game. I haven't really got given my thoughts on it. If you guys want to do that towards the end. But um, Friday evening, I was getting ready to go out um, to the festival, and word had started circulating that something was going on with Aubameyang, and I was like, "Oh shit, here we go again." Reports came out that he was unwell. And I was in group chats, and we were kind of talking about whether Eddie would start, whether it was the best thing to do against Southampton is to get Aubameyang's confidence up, and throwing around, how you do in your group chats, what four you want to play up top and all of that kind of stuff. And then word came out that he was unwell. These pictures started coming out of him um, getting a tattoo, and I'm just thinking to myself, oh my gosh, this is like literally the last thing that we need to happen. And then Saturday morning before the game, news breaks that he's basically been dropped for disciplinary reasons, and then more and more news came out after that essentially he was going to see his mom and to bring his mom back or something like that, going to see his mom, and he had a set time that he was supposed to adhere to when he got back to London Colney. He did not get back in time. He was not he did not miss training, but he didn't come back at the right time. There was some confusion around the COVID protocols as well because things are changing. Um, Obviously, because there's been a rise or a spike in COVID cases, and he was essentially sent away on Friday and subsequently dropped because he didn't adhere to the pre-planned time that he was supposed to come back. And that's pretty much what I got from it. There's a lot of, I think, misinformation out there. There's people that are saying that he didn't show up to training, and it wasn't that he didn't show up to training. It's just they had a specific time that he was supposed to be back, and he didn't get back in time. Um, and so, yeah. And now, I mean, the best thing about it is that we won the game. This is the second time. It's not our first go round with an Aubameyang scandal minutes before the game pretty much starts. And the best thing is that the two times that he has been dropped because he hasn't been really upholding the standard of an Arsenal captain. He was dropped and then we won the game, which makes it a lot easier on Mikel Arteta, who, you know how the media flip-flops. It's before the game, it's the right thing. And then if we lose the game, then it was the wrong thing. So beating Southampton the way that we did kind of reminded me a little bit of that Spurs match kind of thing where we just kind of knew that it would be more of a topic of conversation had we had lost the game. Was the right thing to drop a bombing. But let's be clear. Aubameyang has been poor for weeks now. So even if he had been available, he was not in my starting 11. He wasn't in a lot of people's starting 11. So regardless, I don't know if in the current form that he's in, he would have been much of a better option than anybody else that we had. But we just know how the media flip flops. And since then, there's been a lot of conversation around whether or not Aubameyang should lose the captaincy, who would be a good replacement if he did, and should we, cash in on him? Should he be moved on? Have we, is it time to close the Aubameyang chapter at Arsenal? We're going to discuss all that today, but it's just one of those things where I feel like for me it's different because I've had this feeling about Aubameyang for a while that he's just not really committed to what we're doing here. And with the combination of that plus the form, it just is a nice little cocktail that's going to be um it's just that kind of thing that comes together where I'm not surprised that he's doing this. Like, you know what I mean? It's just I'm not surprised that he's doing this. So I'm not as like upset as a lot of other people, but things happen in stages, you know. It's like with anything else, you know, everybody arrives to the destination at their own time, you know, and there were a lot of people that felt like the right thing to do was to re-sign a bombing to that new contract. And we're not going to relitigate that. We know it's not going to be like now going back and saying, see, we shouldn't have re-signed him, whatever. But there were people that were kind of on the other side of the fence. And, you know, I think his good faith has kind of dwindled, you know, over the last year or so since he's re-signed, based on different events that have happened over the course of the year. So I feel like there's some people that really wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. And because this is not the first time that he's had one of these mishaps, it's hitting them a little bit harder than some other people that haven't really been filling him for a minute. You know, so it just kind of depends on when you got here, you know, when you got here. Yeah. So Gillian is saying, looking like another expensive mistake, but my issue is that he never looked like captain material. Yeah, he's never really been that type of guy. I mean, over, you know, the last year or so, people have been saying that he leads by example. I personally don't feel like that's the case. I always thought that he scored goals because that's what strikers do. I never felt like he led by example in terms of work rate, pressing, um, anything other than scoring goals, you know, which is what a striker does, you know. So the leading by example thing was a little bit of like this is a nice way to sugarcoat, you know, the captaincy to make it seem like this is a good choice. But giving it to somebody just because they're your leading goal scorer, I personally think strikers are difficult captains because they tend to be quite selfish, which is natural in that position because they're there to score goals, right? And they're a lot of times they are kind of like they're pushed by that want for more goals. They're inherently selfish in that way, and that's fine, you know. But when you have somebody that's a captain, they kind of need to be unselfish and do things for the team. And I don't think that necessarily always goes together when you're talking about a striker. So I found it strange that they gave him the captaincy anyway, knowing that he's not a natural leader, knowing that he's, you know, I mean, he was politicking to leave the club just a couple of months prior. So I just found it strange, you know, just to give him the captaincy anyway, you know, but yeah, I'm not surprised that he's hasn't been a great one. Nashville says I did not see the game this weekend. How did we play? I thought we played all right. You know, I thought we played all right. Um, let's see. Mary Chris says the captain for the club stuff is old world, old school. Really, Mikel Arteta doesn't need to name or do anything. North America, we know, just name a captain before the match, no big dealio. Well, I hear you, and I think that there are a lot of people that feel like the whole captaincy thing is antiquated and old school and it doesn't really mean anything. But optically, for a big club like Arsenal Football Club, it does matter. We've had iconic captains over the years, and it's just one of those things where even if it doesn't mean a lot in the dressing room, it would just be better to give it to somebody who's actually a captain. So every time a Aubameyang does something, we don't go back to this conversation. And I know that there are other people in that dressing room that are behaving like captains or leaders. I understand that. But when you have the armband around your like arm and we are one of the most under pressure clubs and because we're huge and we're in decline and we're trying to climb our way back up. So eyes are constantly on us. So you don't want any unnecessary media, stuff going on, the optics. It's just better for it to look right, because we know that they're looking for anything. Have you guys ever, I don't know if you guys have ever watched the US Office, not Office, sorry, Parks and Rec. And they have that one reporter that does the gotcha thing. She always comes around and she's like looking for something to be wrong so that she can go, gotcha. If you guys have ever watched Parks and Rec, but that's essentially what the media does to Arsenal. They're looking for something to talk about. We drive so much traffic. So if it was just on the arm of somebody who was a captain, not Granit Xhaka, who's always, we're always going to be talking about red cards, not Aubameyang, somebody we're always going to be talking about him doing the car wraps and not really being captain material and how he looks when he comes out of the tunnel. If it's just somebody who just acts like a captain, that even if it doesn't mean much in the locker room or in the dressing room, it's not going to be something that ends up being what it is now. So I kind of do agree with you that just because somebody's wearing the armband doesn't necessarily mean that there's not other leaders around, and it doesn't, it's not as big of a deal as it used to be, but it is when it's Arsenal Football Club and they're always looking for something to, gotcha, made another mistake, so I do think it matters quite a bit for us. Mr. Austin says the Arsenal Chelsea 3-1 game, he was dropped, and 2-1 versus Spurs game, he was dropped. Yeah, I mean, he's been dropped quite a bit. I personally feel as though you guys could let me know if you think differently, but I think some of the games, like basically since the FA Cup, we've played best when he hasn't played. I thought some of the games that we played with Lacazette, ESR, Saka, Pepe, Odegaard, that combination group, I think the front line just meshes a lot better. And so I've enjoyed games a lot more when he wasn't there. I know he's an important part of the team, but like when I look at the way that we attacked against like West Brom, I thought, yes, low level of competition, but that was good. Against Spurs last season, that was good. And that didn't include Aubameyang. And I just feel like when we're asking the center forward to basically set up goals and be instrumental in our build up play, you're going to probably choose Lacazette for that, especially if Aubameyang's not really firing, So that's just kind of how I think about it. But I think we play better without him, but that's just me. Tony says captain matters a lot. Matters a lot. Captain matters for a lot of fans, so it matters. I don't care, but enough people do, so I recognize it's important, even if I personally do not care. Nashville Gooner says the next captain has to look scary. Just playing souls for the debate. I don't disagree. A scary captain might be great. Yeah. So now, I guess the biggest question is off of the back of this, and because this isn't the first time that Aubameyang has had one of these mishaps, whatever you want to call it, should he be stripped of the captaincy? It's a pretty drastic, measure, in my opinion, to strip him of the captaincy, because it does become a talking point. And then there's pressure on the next person. And we're not Brighton, we're not Fulham, we're not these teams where nobody really gives a shit about what we're doing. They are all up in our butthole all the time, trying to figure out what we're trying to do. So for me, it's like, it's a big risk, but I almost feel like at this point, it does need to be given to somebody else. I think he's done as Arsenal captain. And if Arteta stripped him of the captaincy, I would say that is the right thing to do. At this point, there's been too many instances where he's disrespected the club. I know that he was going to see his mom. I know it was a serious situation. I understand that she is ill, and I think the club understood that as well. That's why he was allowed to go and travel for personal matters. But if you have a time that you need to come back, you need to be back there. And it just seems like him and time don't seem to mesh. He thinks he's running on his own clock, and he doesn't respect his teammates, the club, the manager enough to be there when he's supposed to be. And not only that, he's the highest paid guy at the club, and he's the captain, and he's in bad form. So for me, I just feel like with all the circumstances, being taken into consideration. If Arteta did strip him of the captaincy, which I'm not sure if that's actually on the cards or not, I would say that's probably the right thing to do. Now, if he has the armband on the next time I see him play, am I going to be upset? Probably not, because I'm just so not here for another Aubameyang conversation. I mean, the guy, I get it. He was running hard at the beginning of the season, but he's just somebody that I feel like the faster we move on from him, the better. We need another striker. We need a new chapter. It kind of feels like when we moved on from Mustafi and Socrates and that group, and it's just like a weight was lifted. I almost feel like Aubameyang kind of carries that same weight. Unfortunately, so for me, I know that there is a chance that he'll still have the captaincy. Will it kill me? No, because I'm just kind of at that point where I'm like, he's going to be gone soon. So it is what it is. But if he was stripped of the captaincy, fine. But is he going to be respected as Arsenal captain? Probably not. Do we view him as Arsenal captain? No, I think he's done, and it's just crazy how we're having these conversations again. He really just, I don't know. So it's just, I'm just tired. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm at this point now where it's like, ugh, we're talking about this guy again. And, we're still a ways away from him being gone. But I think the faster we get a new striker in, the quicker we can kind of move on from this whole thing, let's see what you guys are saying. Jillian says, Ramsdale as captain would be a joke, in my opinion. Leopold says, we don't have time for drama right now. Stripping him of the captaincy will create distraction we don't need. Well, he's creating a distraction on his own. I would say that maybe alleviating him from that duty will stop us from having to have these moments, these 3 or 4 days every couple of months where we have to be talking about whether or not he should be the captain. You probably would have thought that after he got dropped for the North London Derby, that would be the last time that we'd be hearing about it, but it's not. So I would argue on the other side that he's already caused enough drama as it is. He's causing it on his own. So if we just took away the captaincy from him, I mean, I can't say that I don't think that if he still has it, that there won't be drama, So what would be the better thing? Just at least be secure that you're not going to be having this conversation about whether or not you should or not. But I do hear what you're saying. It does create a distraction, but he already is one, so it is happening frequently. So there is that. But I do hear that. And again, I'm not calling for him to be stripped. But if Arteta did decide to strip him, I would feel like that's the right thing to do at this time. Like, I wouldn't look at it like, oh, why would he be doing that? But again, I'm not that deep. Like, I'm not feeling it. Like, it's just is what it is now. Neil says it will cause the next bad performance. It's another talking point. Get it done. Chris says, you think Belichick would be worried about this garbage? But yeah, he would fire Auba fast. Mohammed, do we need to play with a striker? I would say, yeah. I think we're the type of team that needs one. Well, see, that's the other thing, George, is that you're probably just, laughing a little bit because you're not an Arsenal fan. But we actually don't. I mean, this is the issue with this is that if Arteta gives it to Granit Xhaka, then should we, you could argue that Granit is a better captain than Aubameyang, but his type of leadership is not really something that I can really get behind. I do think that he takes himself out of the game quite often, and when he gets his red cards, and that's just not really what you want from a captain, even though he's pretty much always available. He's probably always on time. He's pretty professional, all those types of things. But if he's just going to give it to Granit, then, what the heck, Nashville says, should he be starting is more relevant debate than he as captain. Yeah, I do agree with that. I don't know. You guys let me know in the chat if you guys think that stripping of the captaincy will cause too much drama, so don't do it. because I'm seeing a lot of that. And I hear that argument as well. But that was the whole reason why we did like that before we said at the North London Derby that he shouldn't be stripped of the captaincy. But now we're probably just a year from that having another conversation about him. So I don't necessarily feel like that's going to alleviate the drama, you know, because we're probably a couple months away from another Aubameyang situation. But you guys can let me know what you think. And is it worth it if he just gives the captain's armband to Granit Xhaka? I also think that there is a little bit of a reluctancy to move on from big pillars and big characters in the dressing room. And we have leaders within the squad that are younger. But when you're in a dressing room and, I would imagine that Lacazette, Aubameyang, and Granit Xhaka are big characters in there. The younger players, you tend to settle into the hierarchy. You tend to be like, okay, like I'm going to go with what this guy is saying. So, I do feel like until those three kind of move on, they are going to kind of be that leading voice, which is going to stop the other more the newer captains that we have in our team from actually stepping to the forefront. And so you kind of got to get rid of some of those characters to have the other ones come forward. So I could imagine that Granit Xhaka would get the captaincy, Lacazette would get the captaincy to the end of the season, something like that. And that doesn't really shift the dynamic much, does it? So get to think of that as well. Michael, thank you so much for your super chat. Says, you are talking rubbish. My mother comes before everything. Only Americans don't respect their mother that much. Well, thank you so much for your super chat. But nobody said that he couldn't go see his mom. I think that's if he needed to stay longer, would that have not been communicated to the Arsenal, the Mikel or the team or the club? I think the miscommunication is just like what you're saying is that he shouldn't have been able to go. And that's not what we've said at all. And that's not what the club said. The club gave him permission to go and see his mother. But there was an agreed upon time that he needed to come back in which he missed. So if he needed to stay, and he came later. So what that tells me is that if it was an emergency that he needed to stay longer, he would have been able to communicate that, and they probably would have extended that time. But he didn't do that. So nobody's saying that he shouldn't go see his mother, and that shouldn't be the most important thing to him. But the only Americans don't respect their mothers much is just kind of like an empty statement that doesn't mean anything, because you don't really know how people feel about their mothers. But I appreciate your super chat. Thank you so much. All right. Let's see. Okay. Nashville Gunner says it's true. Our Americans all hate Michael Ramsey's mother. I mean, it's just weird. But I just feel as though nobody's saying that he should not go see his mom. Nobody's saying that if for some reason he needed to stay longer, that the club, he clearly was supposed to be back at a certain time and he wasn't. So he can't just be out in the streets and not coming back at a certain time. This is your job. You know what I mean? And I think people are forgetting that he is an employee essentially of Arsenal Football Club that pays him his salary. So there's rules that you need to abide by, and they allowed him to go and he didn't come back in time. But not to relitigate that, I think a lot of people agree that he needs to be held accountable, and he was wrong for not coming back, not going to see his mom, but not coming back in time. And you guys have kind of said that you're not sure if he should be stripped of the captaincy, but let's say that he was stripped of the captaincy. Who do you guys feel would be the best replacement for Aubameyang? Do you think it should be Lacazette or Granit Xhaka because they're the more senior players in the team? Do you think Tierney can stay fit long enough to be a suitable captain? Or is it one of the new boys, Ramsdale, White, or even Gabriel? or Odegaard. Let me know what you guys think, because personally, I don't think age has much to do with it. I think if you're a leader regardless of your age. Now, does that mean I'd be giving it to Bukayo Saka? No, but there are players in the team that are feel like captains, or at least leaders at the moment. And I want to see what you guys are saying about it. Wait, you had a question. Ali? Oh, Ali Reza, you said you had a question and I think I missed it. Can you repost it and then I'll answer it? Um, Solo says, Laka, laugh out loud, Laka and Jaka, the next two players that are out the door. You can't be serious. It's obviously tyranny. I don't know if it is obviously tyranny, but the reason why I put that out there was because if Aubameyang was stripped of the captaincy, I could see him giving the armband to Granit Xhaka, um, even maybe Lacazette for the rest of the season. Have you seen anybody else with the armband? They're the only two that touch it beyond Aubameyang. So I'm saying that as devil's advocate. Is that who I would choose? No, but I'm just saying that those are probably, I think that those are very viable options because of Arteta's track record with them in the past. Mary Chris says Odegaard and KT are good leaders and future captains. Um, yeah, I can see those two being in the mix. Jordan says, what about Gabrielle? Um, I think Gabrielle, to me, has been our best player this season. And it's not even close, in my opinion. Maybe you could say Emil Smith Rowe, but he came in before the new bunch, and he had a difficult season last season and has really not redeemed himself, but has went up a level. He's improved technically, he's improved in his defending, he's way less rash than he used to be, and you can tell that he's leading by example back there. That's what I think leading by example looks like. He scores goals for us now, and yeah, I could see it. I do feel well, Patrick didn't speak very good English, did he? He kind of needed to learn English when he came to Arsenal, didn't he? So I don't know if even the English thing would be an issue, because I think his teammates can understand him. He can communicate to them. It's one of those things where I don't necessarily feel like you need to be like, whatever, but he does yell and scream at them. So Gabriel is a good shout, in my opinion. Odegaard, he's went up a couple level, not a couple levels, but he has done well in these last couple of games, and he's already the captain of Norway. So there is something there. What I do like about Odegaard is that you can see that he's directing things from the front, and we lack leadership up front. We really do. Because Emil and Saka are really young, and then Aubameyang's up there, and sometimes Lacazette can be a little bit on the periphery. But when Odegaard is there, you can see him like he initiates the press. He tells people where to stand to cut off passing lanes. He works really hard. And what I appreciated about him the other day was that, or after the Man United game, he could have went into a shell after giving away that penalty, but he came straight in and played pretty well in a horrible Arsenal team, an Arsenal team that was playing really poor against Everton, and then turned around again and scored another goal. So 3 goals on the bounce, 4 goals on the season. Probably would have had a 5th one had Aubameyang not touched the one against Watford. And we were looking for a midfielder that could score from midfield, and I feel like that's kind of what he's doing. He's doing what I would expect somebody of his level to do, because he is a captain. I feel like he's leading for leading by example and leading from the front. And we don't have a lot of leaders up there. So I do think he's making a play for it in a way. Ali Reza says the question was regarding Arteta's approach. I don't think outing a player publicly is ever a good approach. Wenger, Fergie, etc. never did it. Remember the Chesney and Wilshire smoking incident? Yeah, I mean, the approach. Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, that maybe keeping things behind closed doors is the best way to do things. But maybe there have been instances that have happened behind the scenes and he still didn't get the response that he wanted. And so he's taking this one a more public route. Um, maybe he doesn't feel like lying for Aubameyang anymore. That's what managers tend to do. They'll lie for you or say, like, whatever, he's just not feeling well. And maybe he was just tired of it. You never really know. But it is a different method that I'm not really sure. I'm not sure if it would work for everybody. I do think if there was anybody that it wouldn't work with, it would be Aubameyang, because I don't think he's the type that would take it and be like, "Oh, I need to turn this around." Think he would kind of shrink into a shell a little bit more. So I'm not sure why. I'm not sure about the approach. I can't say that I fault Arteta for being like he messed up, and I'm not gonna, let him hide behind me. But it is interesting that you've pointed out that other like top managers haven't really done that. But I mean, Aubameyang's disrespecting the club at this point. You know what I mean? So I can't say that I think about like Arteta's made a mistake there. Sorry, there's a lot going on in the house right now. And I am tired, so I'm like trying to make sure that I'm like paying attention. I actually need another cup of coffee, to be fair. Nashville says KT or Gabrielle. Yeah, so I will say that for me, if I had to choose the next captain, I would probably say Gabrielle. Because he's been here a little bit longer. He tends to be in the team most weeks, and I've just seen him kind of carry that back line this season. And I know Ramsdale has done a really good job, but I think, as good as Ben White, I think he's going to be. I think Gabriel has been the star back there. And so he didn't even have the best game against Southampton. I thought he was really shaky at the beginning. But yeah, I think for me, it would be Gabriel, and he's he's really progressing in a way that I don't think a lot of people thought he would, because the narrative around him last summer was, why are we getting him? We're not getting Koulibaly or some big name, center back. Um, and he cost us like 25 million or something from Lille. I remember it took ages for them to complete the deal. All these other people were supposedly coming in for him. But I don't think there was a lot of excitement around him because it was supposed to be Saliba. And so he kind of was on the periphery a little bit. And he's come in and he had his wobble year. And then now look at him. Like, and he still doesn't get, I don't think he gets enough recognition from people outside of Arsenal, to be honest. There's a lot of talking about, you know, um, what's the boy's name from Chelsea? And basically all the Chelsea players, essentially, whether they play for them or not. Mark Gui and the other boy that came through their academy as well. They talk a lot about those guys, but they're not really talking a lot about Gabriel, and I think it's bullshit. I think he's been one of the best center backs in the league this season. He has goals, and he's looks unplayable now. Let's see if he passes the Antonio test in a couple of days, but I think he's been great. So that's who I would choose if Arteta were to strip Aubameyang from the captaincy. But nevertheless, just like you guys have said, yeah, Trevor Chalobah. But just like you guys have said, it could be Ramsdale, it could be White, it could be Tierney, or it could be Odegaard. And I don't think a couple of years ago we would look at this team and feel as though there was more than one. Or why am I so tired and I can't speak? We wouldn't have had more than one choice, so, and that feels good. But yeah, so if he was stripped, that's who I think we should choose. 114 of you guys watching, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. And I guess the next thing I want to kind of touch on is, do you guys think it's time to move on from Aubameyang? Before the season, nobody was really talking about it. I think it was more, we need to get Lacazette off the books, but I've not only seen strip him of the captaincy, but I've seen like we need to move on from him and sell him. And I don't know if I feel that strongly about it, in terms of he needs to go, because I also My my want for somebody to go also is coupled with how I feel, like how confident I feel like we could get rid, you know? So with Aubameyang, I've already kind of settled on the fact that he'll be here until the end of his contract because I can't see anybody taking him on those wages. Um, this form with the amount of his contract that's left. I just can't see anybody paying cash money for him. Like I really, really can't. So it's one of those where I've kind of conceded that okay, he'll stay into the end of his contract, but I'm seeing a lot of he needs to go. He needs to go. Do you guys think it's that deep where he can't even be on the team anymore? Because I feel like it would be nice to have a more senior striker there when we bring in whoever we bring in. But maybe you guys don't feel like that's really needed, you know. But let me know what you guys think. Is it time to like actually move on from him, or is it just remove the captaincy from him and then just move on from there? Let's see. Solo says, "We've not been good defensively though, Jess. How can they be raving about him?" I see other teams that have given up more goals than we have this season, and they still talk about their defenders like they're the best thing since sliced bread. Look, I know we haven't been amazing defensively, but that doesn't mean that individuals. It's kind of like you can be poor, your team can be poor, but that doesn't mean that like first of all, do we think that Gabriel was the issue back there or was it the midfield? Like that's my thing with the defense is that it's hard for me to really, stick a boot in if I know that the issue really stemmed from, the midfield playing really horribly. But when we were in really good form prior to this, well, first of all, this back line wasn't even together really prior to, the Norwich game. Then they were all together. And then we hit a bad patch of form away from home against the better teams. We did. But I also think, like, if you look at the way our midfield played, and in particular Thomas Partey in those games, you can kind of see where the problems stem from. So it's difficult for me to say the defense was not good. What I would say is that defensively, Arsenal as a group, as a team, was not good in those games. But individually, Gabriel has been almost unplayable this season. And again, I've seen teams that have worse defenses with defenders that they continuously kiss their ass, So I want Gabriel to get the same. That's just me. Um, let's see. So Dave is saying Aubameyang right now wouldn't start for Norwich. It's harsh. Nashville says if Arteta is staying no matter what, then he's got to go. He's just not a fit for the system. Oh my gosh, this is hurting. Okay. Io says he's a bad apple. He needs to go. Jack Stone says, give Pepe a chance up front, make him something. Put Pepe up front, make him do something. I don't know about all that. I don't know about all that. Let's see. Chris says Auba is just not a captain. The spotlight being on him has shown his deficiencies as a leader on the pitch. If he don't score, he's a passenger. Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know if I feel like he needs to like leave the club because I also just don't know who's going to take him at this age and this form and this contract length. So I feel like maybe we just have to kind of live with him at the moment. But some people are adamant about him leaving the club, and I'm just like, who's going to come get him? Pap says it's time to move on and let's finish the progression of the project. Progress, progress, progress. We need 3 strikers. 3. Oh, that's a lot. Are you sure we don't have one that we can just use for now? Like Balogun or Martinelli? Do we need 3? Nashville says I would move Pepe from left bench to right bench. Only move he's allowed to make. I mean, he came in against Southampton and just was like, oh, like, I mean, he didn't touch the ball a lot, but I was like, he's done out here. Like, he really is done, isn't he? Um, Solo says strikers don't make good captains. I think we made a mistake there to begin with. Exactly. Leopold says Aubameyang needs to be rehabilitated. No one is going to take with that attitude and form. Rancid Pumpkin says Aubameyang has 18 months left on his contract. It's definitely a possibility to sell Aubameyang in the summer. The question is more, can we sell him? I mean, there's all those things come through my mind is can who's looking for a striker of that? Okay, if I'm said club looking for a striker that's older, I can find other strikers. Like I think Cavani is available, like and he has an excellent attitude. Like, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like there's a lot going against Aubameyang to make a move, and there are quite a few strikers that you can look at. And then also it's just looking at his contract length, looking at his form. There's nothing really to look back at, and say like, okay, well, if we did this and this and this, he'd probably be fine. Like if I was a club, he looks like a big risk to me. He doesn't just look like somebody who just doesn't want to be here. There's questions around whether or not he can actually do the job at the highest level now, and so I don't see it. Barcelona is said to be interested. Can they afford his wages? Like who's going to come on, like they're already in financial problems. Like, you know what I mean? So I think and if I'm Barcelona, I'd look at Cavani, I'd look at somebody else, so it'll be interesting to see if we could offload him. But I think he's more of a Qatar, China, Turkey kind of vibes right now than like the top five leagues. I don't think any of them teams are going to take him. But I would not be surprised if we tried to offload him, because I don't care what about Arteta's saying. He's probably ready for him to go. Loan Auba. Ivy says loan Auba, outpay half his wages like we did with Ozil. Barcelona's looking for a striker after Aguero retired. Yeah, I think we're in the Ozilish territory where we might have to pay a bit of the salary, to move him on and all of that. So I wouldn't be surprised if we had to do something like that. Io says Newcastle just they'll take Auba. I can't see Aubameyang freezing cold in Newcastle. Can you? I've never even been there, but I know it's cold. It sounds cold. Newcastle sounds cold to me. Pap says with what Auba makes for his production this season, we can pay for two strikers, pay him off. Yeah, so it's one of those, you guys. Honestly, I don't know if he'll go anywhere, and I don't know if I'm at the point where I'm kicking him out of the club, but if he was stripped of the captaincy, I'd feel fine. Like, I'd be like, "Okay, cool, we can move on from that." I do think that this situation will continue on. I don't think there's no fine that you can give him that will put a dent in his what he makes, so fining him doesn't make a difference. Taking away his playing time, I don't think really makes a difference anymore because I don't really feel like I'm getting vibe from Aubameyang that he's desperate to play for us or desperate to prove anybody wrong. Um, so it's disappointing. And I feel like this will expedite things a little bit in terms of Arsenal wanting to move on from him. I do think he's done in terms of like they are not building anything around him. We are moving forward. Would not be surprised if Lacazette continued to start until otherwise. But I'm not surprised that this has happened. And I just feel like it'll continue to happen until he leaves. He's just done, like, and so I don't think we're going to turn around and see this new invigorated Aubameyang. This is the new invigorated Aubameyang. Arteta just said a couple of weeks ago that this was the best Aubameyang that he's seen. This is the best he's looked. So if this is the best Aubameyang we're going to get, then, what do we have to look forward to here? But, you know, ultimately what the team did was they won the game, and that was the most important thing. Winning the game after that drama kind of quieted things down a little bit. I still see that he is trending. People are still upset, but ultimately, I think if we played against West Ham without him, I just don't see I don't think I honestly he's going to go to AFCON in January, and then we'll have February, March, April, and May. Like, I think you could bring in another attacker and live without it if it comes down to the point where we can't rely upon him to start games. Like, it is what it is. Nali Tuba says Barcelona can get Aubameyang. Um, let's see. Nashville says Martinelli has been dancing in his room all weekend. The demise of Auba is the best thing for him. I mean, let's be real. Like, Martinelli looked so good against Southampton. And I know that very low level of competition, very low level of opposition. Like, I'm not about to sit here and act like Southampton were good. But Martinelli had Livermento on toast. And I just feel like he needs to continue to play, and we'll obviously have a preview tomorrow for the West Ham game, but I want him to continue to play. Like, I just want to, this is his third decent performance in four games. He didn't particularly play well against Everton, but I also think that had something to do with the team not playing particularly well. But against Man United, against Newcastle, and against Southampton, he's been very good, and so I would continue to play him. He's just a real threat, and I just think we lack it. But I do agree that not having a bombing in his way is probably the best thing for him. So I'm not very like, oh my gosh, we're gonna have to play Martinelli. Martinelli looked good. So yeah. Dave FC says Martinelli is your best forward, in my opinion, very effective and hardworking. Yeah, I mean, he is really effective, but I mean, what do you guys think about like Martinelli versus ESR? Because ESR plays off of that left-hand side. He didn't play against Southampton, maybe with an eye towards West Ham. We know if Aubameyang doesn't play, then Lacazette will most likely lead the line. So, I mean, this is where it gets a little bit like, do you start ESR because that's your old reliable, kind of, what he's about, but he's definitely not as dangerous, I think, for a defender. Like, if I'm a defender, I think I'd rather play against ESR, and that doesn't mean that ESR is shit. All I'm saying is that, like, Martinelli has played really, really well, so do you drop him for ESR? Do we need to do that if you already have Lacazette and Odegaard potentially as your number 10s? Then can't you afford to bring in another more attack-minded player if you even have Saka on the other side? It gets a little bit like, what's going on? It's interesting. But Mary Chris says, yep, Martinelli probably off the bench versus the Hammers as long as ESR and Saka are healthy. Pap says, but the performance against Southampton what was good. Norwich, Burnley are poor, but the performance was bad. Performance against Southampton is what was good. Norwich, Burnley are poor, but the performance was bad. No, I hear what you're saying. I don't know if you guys are talking to each other, but the difference between the performance against Southampton and the ones against the other lower level teams was that it was a more complete performance and we battered them, and besides the first 20 minutes, we were really, really dangerous. So I do agree that this performance was better. Nashville Gunner says ESR played well in the middle with Laka. Yeah, he did. He did. I mean, we have options. It just depends on, this is going to be our lives, you guys. Like, we're going to have more options. I believe that, there will be conversations around whether it should be Martinelli and ESR. And those are good conversations to have and good options to have, but if it's a meritocracy and we're talking about the last 4 games, since Martinelli has been in, like, he's been really good. The only thing that he didn't get in these last couple of games was a goal. But I think if he stays in, he'll get the goals. But ESR has been one of our top goal scorers this season. So such an interesting conversation to have. I like talking about this kind of stuff with you guys. Ivy says ESR should sit the bench. Herb says Martinelli is more physical than ESR. So in games where physicality is required, then Martinelli is to start. Well, that would mean against the Hammers that Martinelli would start because I view them as one of the more physical teams in the league. They're quite big. Like there's not really any small players, and even the small ones like Bowen and Ben Rama are not easy to push off of the ball. And I would imagine that Moyes would tell them to be extra physical with us because I mean, that's just the old or reliable kind of thing that you tell your team. They're soft, they'll give it up. Just, Moyes has been around the block, so I would imagine that they are quite physical. And what I liked about Martinelli is even against Man United, like he gave them fits. He gave them fits. And I think sometimes ESR lets people off of the hook, and I would want him to be more aggressive, but he's not really that. He doesn't have that personality just yet. And with Saka being a little bit more on the reserve side as well, you kind of need somebody that's going to just like go at somebody. So it'll be interesting. Io says that second half against Southampton was the best I've seen those boys play in a while. I agree. Um, Pap says if Martinelli keeps his performances with that drive to press, he will always make something happen. And that's the one thing is like I feel like directness, pace, and just willpower and work rate is something that is so simple, but it's underrated. It's very underrated in football for some reason, and I feel like Martinelli, he may not have silky skill, but what he does know is how to create that separation, how to burst past people. He also presses actually to win the ball, which is something that a lot of our players don't really do. They kind of press because they have to be there, but they don't try to actually pick the ball off of them. And there were just times where I thought Martinelli just got the ball because he just wanted it more. And it's so underrated in football, but it's not always about who's the better player, it's who wants it more. I mean, we should know that as Arsenal fans because we've often had the better team, but we haven't won games because the other team wants it more. And so just those simple things make Martinelli more dangerous than some of our other players. And I feel like we'll miss him in that intensity if he doesn't play. But Arteta really likes Emil Smith Rowe, and I like him as well. He adds something different, but I'm not sure if you look at Lacazette, Odegaard, Smith Rowe, and Saka. I'm not sure where the goals come from with that front four. So, but I feel like that's the one he might go with. Ify says they are really strong. Herb says yes, exactly. Martinelli has to start against the Hammers. Um, Nali Tuba says 100% Arsenal get a European spot this season, beating everybody outside the top four. Call it from August. Oh, your Europa spot. I mean, I would bite your hand off for that right now. No, it's not lowering expectations or accepting mediocrity, but like literally, it's going to be so hard just to get Europa. Nashville says I would not mind going full youth group up front and play Gabby up the middle. It's risky, but I mean, I wouldn't cry about it. I think the last time we seen a team like that, though, we were disappointed. Was that Brentford? I think that was Brentford. I think it was, but that was a while back, and we played horrible back then. But I remember feeling really confident when that lineup came out. I was like, "Oh yeah, Martinelli, Balogun, we're gonna finally see it. Saka, ESR, look at it, it's gonna be bomb." And it was trash. Like it was trash. Um, Nashville Gunner says Martinelli, ESR, Saka, and Odegaard is really easy to cheer for. It is easy to cheer for. I feel like we need no matter who plays for West Ham, those center backs are really, really physical. And I know that sometimes Lacazette isn't even enough. Like sometimes he can't even hold the ball up because he's not that strong, but he's stronger than some of our more young players. So I still feel like you might need Lacazette up there, just a more experienced head. And he also, the last time we played against West Ham, he actually played really well. That was the Thomas Party to Odegaard to Lacazette game where I think Callum Chambers played right back. We came back from 3-0 down. So I almost feel like I want that same kind of group. Actually, yeah, it was Saka, Saka, um, Lacazette, and then Aubameyang started off of the left. But instead of starting Aubameyang, you could start Martinelli. And I think that could do it. That could do it. Um, let's see. That could do it. Um, Roadman tie. Arteta is a hair merchant. If he had a bald head, he pulls already be sacked. Okay. Um, let's see. Solo says everybody is easy to cheer for until they start losing or not producing. Laugh out loud. Well, I mean, I think ultimately we are a little bit more forgiving to the young players than we would be to the older players because they are just like not really holding up their own weight. So, but I hear what you're saying. Lord Gunnar says Martinelli did score against West Ham last time he played against them. So yeah, I think that would be, my option, but I think we're in a even though we haven't bought a striker, which I mean, we may end up doing it in January because of all of this. You never really know, but at least we have options, some options, a little bit of options that we can look at. And it's not just if Aubameyang doesn't play, we're done for. So yeah, but that's gonna be it for today, you guys. I just wanted to get back into the swing of things, give you guys my thoughts on Aubameyang. It just is what it is, just waiting until he's out, because I'm just waiting for a new striker to come in. I think that will change a lot of the dynamics, and then he'll go, and then it is what it is. But um the rest of the week. So let me just check the schedule. I was doing it earlier. Tomorrow we'll be doing I'll be doing the preview on here for Arsenal versus West Ham. So a little bit of what we did today, talking about lineups, score predictions, what are going to be the key matchups, what does this game really mean for our season? It's another opportunity to play against a team that's in and around us. And with a win, I think we'll be in the top four or within a point of it or something like that. So it's a really important game. Can we get the points? Can we beat a slightly less, like, I wouldn't say they're out of form, but West Ham doesn't look as strong as they looked in the last couple of weeks, so can we take advantage of that? And then on Wednesday, for Arsenal Vision, if you guys are not like subscribed to the channel, you should. Arsenal Vision podcast, and then as well, they have their podcast on like Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all that kind of stuff. We'll be doing our live stream preview before the West Ham game, and then I'll be doing player ratings here afterwards. So tons of content, and then obviously we play Leeds at the weekend, so we're gonna be doing a bunch of stuff. So yeah, make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel. Spectrums, thank you so much for becoming a member. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.